Meredith, I'm so excited to see the number of people in this group.
28 people.
Wow, 32. It just grew.
And we're just a minute away from an exciting start to this afternoon's presentation. The good news is they're all going to be recorded, so some of us are going to miss a few while we're in certain sessions, so we can see them later. All right, we're on time, and at 34 people, I'm going to open our session. I'm Meredith Aronson. I'm the Director of CRM and Digital Experience Services at the University of Arizona, where we've been at this Salesforce activity since 2019. But really excited to be able to introduce Sarah Cheatham from the Western Michigan University, who like us, has a significant focus on supporting users and user adoption. And so it's my pleasure to introduce Sarah as the CRM Systems Project and Training Specialist at Western Michigan after leaving a post as Associate Director of Admissions. So she knows people. So I'm going to hand it off to you, Sarah, and excited to hear your talk today on unlocking potential.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Again, Sarah Cheatham. Have been at this for a while and absolutely 10 years in the enrollment management space before I'll say jumping ship or heading over to the fun side of technology. Our user base is right around 734 users. And of those groups, we have 280 of those with full licenses. Pardon me. And 450 with our company community users. Our full database right now, though, is 2.7 million records. That's a lot of information. And I have users across the board, across our entire university helping to recruit students. So let's talk a little bit about that today. This session is really near and dear to my heart. And we've called it Unlocking the User Potential. So we'll talk about training approaches and skill building for customized to your users. And please feel free to use the chat. I'll be trying to monitor a little bit and the Q&A with help of my fabulous moderator. Let's talk a little bit about our agenda. I'm going to provide a little bit of our institutional background with Salesforce, paint a little bit of a picture of my background and where we are today. We're going to spend a significant amount of time talking about the process I went through to really reframe our user training sessions, as well as the steps I recommend you use and the results Western Michigan had in order to unlock our user potential. I do provide some sample training resources at the very, very end. And so you'll have this information as well as those links directly after. So let's talk about Western Michigan and Salesforce. Western Michigan University has 3 instances of Salesforce. And I represent the CRM that is specifically used for recruitment of our incoming students of all levels. So we work with students who are starting that exploration phase of their college search process all the way to that first term of enrollment. In 2017-ish, we had at our university multiple CRM systems and no centralized communication tool, database, what have you, that stored all of our prospective communication leads, students. And it was a significant problem. From one person who had been in the admissions and recruitment space, it's so difficult to know what everyone's doing if you don't have a centralized unit. So we were charged, or our Department of Technology and the division was charged with finding a solution, and we landed on Salesforce. I will share that our leadership team, our implementation team, was directed with I can't believe they did it, but they did, the nearly impossible task of going from purchase to implementation in 6 months. So if that makes you palpitate a little bit, I understand, I'm with you. I don't recommend it for anyone. And the team in this enrollment management technology office were fantastic. They absolutely did it. It was insane. At that time, our enrollment was about 22,000 students. And we right now are at about 17,500 students total of all levels, undergrad and graduate. But during that implementation process, we had this really unique opportunity to coordinate and bring together about 10 different units who were doing things completely differently and in their own ways. We have 3 different admission units on our campus. We also have 7 academic colleges. And within those, there are multiple people responsible for recruiting and yielding new students. Enter in all the rest of our marketing folks, our communication folks, our student workers into that system, and you have a lot of things going on. Our small but mighty team, there's 4 of us right now, and every year you can see some of those annual stats that we have in our as the throughput for our unit. But I will share, we didn't get to where we were today just by luck. There has been significant work in this space for training and skill building. We originally didn't have a trainer or a person in my role. That came a few years later after implementation. And there were 2 fantastic people in this role, Hannah Dodd and Julia Trowbridge, who really built our training foundation. And we've been able to grow that ever since. So a shout out to them. If you're listening, thank you so much. And it's been a very great opportunity to have that handed to me as I stepped into this role. My experience is in enrollment management, though. So I was faced with that oddness and perhaps uncertainty that when new technology comes on board and you don't really know what to do with it, what are you going to do? And so I spent the better half of 7 years troubleshooting, trying to figure out what was going on, partnering with my colleagues to say, what's the best way to do this tool? And last year, I came into the EM Tech technology role as the new trainer and project specialist. So there's a lot going on in a short window of time. Here we are today. Oops, and that's fun. You don't need to see that. Let's go back. You know, that's always fun to click the wrong button. All right. So when I'm in my role, one of the most, interesting, biggest pieces we talk about all the time, I do a road show. I go to departments. I ask users. Users come to me, ask for training. And the biggest question I get is, how do I do this? And my reaction is the little girl on the right side of your screen is, I don't know. I get asked by so many new users during my first few weeks, and even now, how do I do my job? And my role is really, I can teach you how to use the tool, but the business practice is up to you folks. And so my face looks like this a lot. I try to hide it, but I'm not really good at hiding expression. So if you're with me, I appreciate that. Thank you for agreeing or understanding. If you're in my boat, welcome to the crew. We'll get through it together. So I had this beautiful training program. It is fantastic. And it was great for our early adopters, those users who were so excited to learn new technology. And then we had a pandemic. And then we had an enterprise-wide system that is truly getting more enterprise-wide. I think I forgot that part. This system was supposed to go enterprise-wide, and we left out a lot of users along the way. We didn't have those discussions. We really took some missteps in those places to see what they needed and when they needed it. So now more and more people are now coming to the table. But this phrase, it's abbreviated, but summarized from an actual user I had at a training session last fall. And they said, Sarah, all this wonderful data is wonderful and great, but I literally will never, ever use this in my role. Talk about like a knife to the heart, simultaneous gut punch. I was like, what do you mean? You need all of this information. And it really that was the light bulb moment. It took me that conversation with that one staff member to realize maybe we need to reframe what it means to build some skills in our CRM. Let's talk about what we did. Even with all of this going on, I am currently a doc student, and I was looking for oh gosh, an elective class to take last summer. And there was a wonderful class by our educational leadership department for adult learners. And I said, oh gosh, I'll take that, see if I can learn a couple things. And wow, did I learn a lot. I really was just trying to uncover what makes adults learners tick. Who are they? Why are they different? And there were 5 tenets that I truly took to heart and I brought into this reframed training session. The first of which is to make sure that we are meeting learners where they are when they need it. Not every single user is excited about technology. Not every single user is excited about meeting with people. Not every single user knows what to expect. And so we have to have this opportunity to meet those adults in their space at their time. My favorite one, and I think the area that I've grown the most as a facilitator of learning, is to lean into those learners' experiences and apply them to the real world. We have to remember that a lot of our faculty, our staff, even sometimes some of our student workers haven't been in the educational space in maybe quite some time. It could be nerve-wracking for them to even come to the space to say, I want to learn a new skill. And if we celebrate them and those experiences that they've already have, it's going to allow you to build rapport, level the playing field a little bit, and actually learn from each other to help make knowledge gaining a mutual experience and not just one way. I'd love to acknowledge that first step is that you've already talked about you're here, you've arrived, and celebrating that is key. The third task and the third area that we've really identified in adult learning is this idea of identifying competencies for each user and allowing those users to actually self-direct their own learning experiences. You don't need a regimented step-by-step program, but by developing competencies by role, by user, by persona, it allows the user themselves to go through that checklist and say, I know this skill. I know this skill. Oh, this is the set of skills that maybe I need to learn a little bit more in. And your role is to transition from teacher to facilitator. If you're teaching, knowledge goes one way. It can feel very much like a power dynamic. And that's why we started actually using the word skill building rather than just training. We're building skills together. And as you empower those users to explore more on their own, do some digging on their own, and building in their prior experiences to the real world, they'll be able to actually take on a ton of data and make your system go way further than one person can do by themselves. And then finally, it's all about evaluation. You want to make sure that you're reaching those folks at the place and time they need to be reached, but also that you're getting what you need out of it. Like implementing a CRM, it's never done. It is never fully baked. If you're never going back and identifying the processes, the tools, the systems that you have, are you truly being the best advocate for your learners or your users? I would argue no. And so it's a key part about this entire process. There are a ton of slides available to talk about. If you're interested in adult learning, tons of things to read about. So let's talk about those steps for unlocking user potential. And the very first step we have is honestly, just get to know your users. Who are they? So on the left side of your screen, you're going to see the steps that I would encourage, the practical steps that you can do in your organization or your unit to make things go. Honestly, how many users do you have? And can you organize those users into groups? If you can, you're already a step further than I was about a year ago. This is where we started. I learned we had 734, give or take, users in our system. And their roles, their profiles were everywhere. And so what we were trying to do was say, who are they? And do you really need all the same material? I discovered I could categorize all of these users into about 10-ish, maybe 11 personas. Those range from our 3 major admission offices, graduate program coordinators in every single one of our departments, college academic recruiters, academic advisors, student workers, and we have executives who log into our system all the time. So truly, what do all those users need? Does my executive need to know how to add a student? Probably not, but they do need to know how to pull the report or unlock their dashboard. Step 2, what should these users be able to do? So my highest recommendation is to use whatever platform, whatever tools are easiest for you to map out the basic skills you believe each persona needs to be successful in their job. That took me weeks. Again, a one-person doing this idea. But I went through and said, an admission counselor should do these 10 things. From what I can see in our system, an academic advisor needs these 8. A student worker needs these 5. And what you could also do is go back out there and solicit feedback from your key champions. A lot of you folks, I was scrolling through the list, we have a lot of project managers, supervisors, training specialists in the room. I know you folks talk to people. Use your feedback, use your networks, identify them. No one should go at this alone. What I found is that everyone, well, nearly everyone besides executives, needed to know how to add people into the database and how to link their Outlook email to Salesforce. That was it. Nearly all of our users report, but they report on very different objects. And I also learned that what I was perceiving as use based on a permission set or a role was completely different than what was reality. And so by able to connect with our users, it was able to share that responsibility. And looks like Kaylee maybe just said that too. You're empowering these users to take responsibility for their own learning and to really have that additional buy-in. It's exciting. It really is. And I love that comment. Thank you, Kaylee, for sharing. Let's talk about step 3. I really encourage everyone to create sessions that are going to address those specific competencies. When you develop training, those basic steps honestly should stay the same. A transcript's a transcript. It doesn't matter where it's from. An application's an application. An inquiry's an inquiry. An email's an email. But you really should be developing specific use cases that can grab the attention for those users. What does that specific report need to look like? What would be the specific example for a student needing to, or for a user to add a student into the CRM? And then create test scenarios that you actually work through together. You don't need to really create a ton of unique sessions. The only real uniqueness, this is like a cheat sheet, is just those specific use cases and understanding how to deliver and how to have those conversations and connect to your users and their experiences. So our findings at Western Michigan, I have learned that I had to quickly be pretty familiar with the business processes of each persona. And that really helped me build those connections between groups. So as I met with as many of the graduate program coordinators as I could, I learned that of the 5 I had met with initially, all 5 had very different processes, but I could make some connections. That's a skill of mine as a facilitator, is to make those connections for those users. And so perhaps build those bridges and provide extra resources to those folks to say, have you partnered with this unit? Or could we maybe, are you interested in perhaps exploring things a little bit differently to make sure you're in alignment and have this work for you? Also, all of our sessions are available for reference. We have an entire CRM resource library, which allows for more discussion in live sessions, but it also allows those folks who don't have time to sit in a live session to do things the way they want to on their own time. Step 4 is leaning into those experiences. I feel like I just hound on this step, but it is so important, especially for adult learners. We as adults, we all have our own background, our histories, our intersections of identity. We come from different places. We know our stuff, and we know where we know, and we don't know what we don't know. And if you come to the table with that open understanding, you can help make those connections a little bit easier for your users. Before you get started, no need to be all business. Get to know each other, include some relationship building. Celebrate the simple notion that those people arrived to your session. And then ask those questions. Are they looking forward to using? Is there a specific bottleneck in their life that they need, in their working life, that they need to do or they need to overcome? What do they like to do for fun? What we found at Western is that so many of our users had fear that implementing technology would lessen job security. And that's a really hard place for a lot of folks to live in. And when we took a step back and helped build those connections, our team has been able to help users understand or adjust their lens and frame to say, this is meant to automate those positions of your role that you don't need, that can be automated. No more copy and pasting every single admit letter to your student. You don't need to do that. Let's free up your human computer to build those relationships, to do the complex troubleshooting that is important and actually allows you to achieve those user goals and your own personal goals to make sure that you are achieving greatness that you see. The more connections or use cases that are directly applicable to that user, I've noticed the better adoption and knowledge retention. Those are the users that come back all the time. Those are the inboxes that I'm having. Those are those one-on-one appointments that I continue to have those continuing skill sessions with, because they're able to connect it. And then finally, it's that evaluation and input. These sessions should truly be learner-centered. You shouldn't be the one getting everything out of it. Your learner should. And I think it's really important to be comfortable with not having all the answers. People live in uncomfortable, and it's okay to be uncomfortable, because that's when you grow the most. When we started this project back in 2017, I was one of the most uncomfortable people in this entire university. But now we can help each other work through those pieces of discomfort, that's probably the word, in order to help our users grow and actually use this tool that it was meant to be truly enterprise-wide, to help our students through their funnel to become WMU Broncos. And have developed that official feedback tool. So far right now, we're in the process of evaluation. So far, so good. Our official evaluation will come through at the very end. But it is important to notice that, or recognize that the results of every session will be a little bit different. I have so many learners who come and say they leave jazzed and energized. Others, I can see the wheels start going, and they need to simmer on the data that we've learned and we've reviewed and shared for about a week. And then they come back with questions. And then I have other users who get it right in the moment, but are really thankful for all of those resources, because as soon as they walk out, the knowledge goes with them. And that's okay. My job as a facilitator is to make sure that all comes together. So if you will look at individual sessions versus your individual sessions might be a little bit less positive as far as the whole, because it is a full journey. Or skill building is never one and done. There are some sources for adult learning here. So again, you can take these with you, but let's talk about some of our sample training resources. So for you, we have everything listed on our main CRM page. I can also drop this in the chat here in a little bit too, but we've linked to structure and competencies, user roles, and live sessions. And so we update this. It's on a public website, not really hidden behind anything crazy. So anybody can really see it. And we've linked structures by user roles, by their competency levels, and those are mutually agreed upon competencies by what we call super users. Thanks, Meredith. That's great. Thank you. These are mutually agreed upon by our groups, so they can say, yes, this competency we did agree upon, and it's a constant state of flux. So if we learn and get more feedback from our users that really these 3 skills are coming up and we don't need these 3 skills anymore. It's iterative. We can work together to make that happen. And then finally, I do want to wrap this up. We do have quite a few minutes for some discussion and question and answers, but I want to really talk about these tips for success. What do I encourage all of my colleagues to do? And if I had to do this all over again, what would I do? And the first is just be completely transparent in your offerings. Allow your users to know what they're going to get out of it by attending a session or what they can expect from that session. When you have more and more users, it's awesome. I found the most robust discussions are limited, right? 3 to 5 users, because they can connect off each other and really learn together. Our sessions are tailored so that the cases that we talk about are promoted to those specific user groups. And that's what we'll cover during those live sessions. I really encourage you, any user, to collaborate with users to deliver sessions that are truly going to meet their needs. That was really what sparked this entire project, this entire conversation. Sessions maybe weren't completely delivering on all of the knowledge that every user needed. And so that light bulb moment allowed us to really reflect on what we were offering, how we were offering, and when we were offering. I encourage you to also consider multiple modalities for sessions. So if you're clicking on that website, there is maybe one that you really can't get to, and that is my CRM resource library, because it is protected behind our university logins and passwords. But in there, I have every PowerPoint. We have fantastic guide information that was produced from the 2 training specialists before me, as well as some recorded sessions. So maybe somebody wants to hear it live, but they don't want to sit through a live session, or they have off hours. And that goes into that storing information in an easily accessible place. And then finally, I really encourage everyone just to celebrate the desire to learn more. These types of roles, the trainer, the specialist, the BA, have this unique opportunity on the user end to build those bridges and those connections between our end users and our technology team. There's a lot of communication that comes to play here, a lot of relationship building, and a lot of just honoring each other and the strengths that we bring to the table. If we celebrate those aspects, we're going to be in a really great place. And it also lifts the stress off of our shoulders from the technology perspective to be the only voice at the table. The best training approaches are allowing us to empower our users and bringing them to the table to truly unlock what's next in our future iterations. And with that, I want to just wrap up quickly. We do have about 10 minutes for some Q&A, and I invite you to drop some information in the chat or in the Q&A session. So thank you so much.
Hey, thank you so much, Sarah. That was absolutely wonderful. And again, I would invite people to drop questions in the Q&A. While we're waiting for that, one of the things I really appreciated in your presentation, which I think is quite unusual, is that we often assume we in IT build technologies and then we train the technology. This is how it works because we're the builders, right? And for you to separate out the different roles, which really reflect different kinds of work, and train what they need to get their work done using your technology, it's not at all subtle, but it is. I think we don't tend to do that. And it was really nice to see that called out. I'm kind of curious, was that really an outcome for you of your course, the classes you were taking, or did you have a sense before that, hey, this is just not landing in the way I want it to?
So that's a great question. Thank you. The sense came in the springtime when I had that connection with that staff member who said, this isn't working for me. It's not connecting. And so that wasn't subtle at all. It was straight to my face, which was great. I'd much rather have those honest and raw conversations. And I think if we would have taken an approach like this in the beginning, we would have had that enterprise-wide user buy-in that we were missing for so long. But now, because we are having those conversations and bringing users to the table, we're able to build that bridge. And so I would say it's a little bit of both. The outcome of my coursework was the self-directed part of learning, but the incorporating of the user in those business practices and what happens next was, I think, just something that was more of a gut reaction.
That's great. Thank you. Still happy to welcome any other additional questions posted in the Q&A or in the chat. But I'll plow through to a second one while we let others organize their interests. How much are you seeing folks use the asynchronous part of your persona support and training materials? Is that something you're able to track? And do you want to talk about that a little bit compared to the work that you're doing in person?
Absolutely. So I would say that's something where I'm still trying to get the best handle on. But because our information is, we have it's a SharePoint site. And so that's how everybody logged in. It's not through Salesforce. Don't yell at me, everybody. But there is this idea where we can see views and information of how many people have viewed a specific video or accessing some specific PowerPoints. What I find is that users often forget, or there's a lot of overwhelmness to, I need an answer. And so usually it's me dropping in that link of, here's what I suggest. And if you also need to take more time with the material, here's a direct link to a resource that may help you go step by step through that on your own time. If this is a lot, and that tends to be pretty common. And we're seeing quite a few users in there.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I see we have some new questions emerging. Do you want to take on Kyla's comment? She's encountered users in the past who were nervous about new tech impacting their jobs. Did you encounter that, and how did you handle working with them?
Oh, yes. Oh, gosh, that's a great question, Kyla, I think. Yes, absolutely. This actually was the majority of the first roles and days in the role. And when I come into, it's all about the relationship, to be quite honest with you. And it's acknowledging that you have a skill set, that individual has a skill set. Let's talk about how we can mutually get our skill sets to make the best solution for that user. And so, though that was definitely a huge part of those conversations, they can be difficult conversations. I would share from my aspect of a facilitator, what I found is that the user didn't want to tell me that that was their fear, but it was a sense that I, as a facilitator, could feel. And I would then offer that as a word of support, saying, the last thing I hope for you to think of is that this is going to take your job, because that is the last intent. And usually, even that one statement, you can see the relief come from the shoulders and a barrier drop, and to enable an accurate or a better conversation between myself and that user.
That's great. There are a bunch of things coming in. I'm just going to keep traveling through. From Amanda, do you create screenshots and videos? And if so, do you have tips about easy ways to create test records so that actual university data is not shown?
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. Yes, actually, in our basics training and our beyond basics training, both level ones, we actually create test records in our CRM, and we call that their own record. So, and I present it in a way that says, this is your record. You can't mess it up. And if you do, it doesn't matter. It doesn't go anywhere. And so that's actually what we do in our first class. So there's a flag in our system. All of our test records are first name with the word test, last name Bronco, and there's a script that goes through and marks that as a test record officially in our system. So those records get excluded from major reports, communication, any exports into our SIS. But we play with that data. And so when folks are saying they want to practice logging an inquiry, okay, let's log an inquiry and see what it looks like on the back end. Or if they want to send that email, send it using your test record and see what happens to your account. Let's do it. Let's play. And that has alleviated a lot of that stress that users have about not loving technology or afraid to press the wrong buttons. And that was something that we found really useful.
Great. Here's another great question. They got 3 votes. I'm sorry if I missed this from Amanda, but how did you determine the personas, and should a department help with this?
Yeah, so that's a great question too. I'm laughing because I tore down the beautiful sticky notes that were on this back brick wall for a very long time. But truly it was mapping it out, breaking it down. I went through multiple iterations, exported a list, went through what do you even look like? But it ended up being examining users and profiles and trying to, what could I do to clump them together? And a combination of who were the users that were coming into my sessions? Who were the folks who actually wanted to be trained? And between the combination, we were able to determine those personas. My background in enrollment management and admissions with my experience as an end user also helped me quickly get to those persona types. And so I was able to take some of those drafts to departments, but truly taking a draft to a department and having them say yay or nay got me a lot more buy-in than just asking them to create it, because it was another task for them to do. So I actually did the legwork on that.
That's great. Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Moving forward, we have an anonymous request that has some interest. How do you find it best to work with users that might not feel as competent navigating technology? We've had issues with individuals feel like they're too old to learn these types of skills. We heard about that from Peter this morning, right? And feel overwhelmed and abrasive to the changes. Do you want to respond to that?
Sure. Oh gosh. First, thank you for that question and that comment. I do feel very similarly, or I have in many areas. And I know that many of my colleagues at different universities also have encountered that same challenge. I will give an answer from my personal own lens. I found with those users in that space, being able to spend some one-on-one time with those people, getting to know them a little bit more, or taking the time to show that one individual or those two individuals around alleviates that power dynamic and breaks down that wall of the uncertainty. Because that feeling of being too old to use a new skill or overwhelmed, it's really just fear, right? Like that's uncertainty, fear, anxiety, like that's really the presence of it. And so if you can say or ask to meet that person in maybe their space, maybe come to them, spend a couple days with them, if it's a mandatory adoption that you're working with, that might be helpful. But you also might need to give that person their space to come to the table on their own time. And so I think it all depends on how your institution is also encouraging participation and adoption. I think that also plays into it. But from a one-to-one standpoint, it takes a little bit of time, but the outcome, you actually could get another champion on your side by spending that time with that user.
Well said. And it's beautiful to see that level of investment. And you probably could imagine cloning yourself many times over to be able to do more of that, right? In the hours in the day.
I don't know if the world needs more Sarah Cheathams running around, but we could definitely use more help. That's for sure.
All right. There's a question from Dwayne James. What's the most important thing to communicate when you're first meeting with a new user?
Oh, that's a great question. One of my favorite things is, who are you and what do you do? What's your role? Because when I start with them and their role, I can integrate the Salesforce part. But the 3 other things I always share in every session is that this process is customized. It is a beautiful friendship and the start of a very long journey. You will not be the Salesforce expert overnight, and that's okay. It's taken me 7 years to get to where I am, and there's a lot I still don't know. But understanding is that this process is a community, right? You have all of the community aspects to each other within your university. Trailhead has a community. Higher Ed Dreamin's their own community. You can utilize each other in order to brainstorm, brain dump, talk to each other, but it's okay if you need extra time to get to where you need to go. And so the fact that it is not one and done, and it is a start of a very long, beautiful journey, tends to help level that playing field.
It's beautiful. All right, we have seconds, but I just want to be able to respond to Carrie's question. Who did all your training modules for you? And do you have a specific trainer?
That's a great, so our training modules, most of them were pre-created with our two trainers ahead of me. So I want to make sure I give an extra kudos to Hannah Dodd and Julia Trowbridge. They're the ones who created the majority of our training modules, and I was able to update them. However, I'm the only trainer right now, and we've only had one trainer the entire time. So it was either Hannah, Julia, or myself delivering all the training and updating the modules. It's a great question. Thanks, Carrie.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sarah. And please help me join, please join me in expressing our gratitude for such a great presentation, Sarah. And
thank you so much. You guys have been fantastic. I'm going to use this fun confetti here too. That's fun. Thank you all. I appreciate it. And I look forward to connecting with you a little bit further.
That sounds great. Bye all.